That's weird. It's opening. Just gotta give it a second. It'll load for maybe a minute or so while Unity sets up all the basic Unity items. And I assumed everybody here's downloaded our 2 funky images and our 3 funky packages, which we will be using to populate our lovely world. The 2 images will be, well, the first one will be a texture for our terrain, and the other one's going to be our skybox. And the 3 packages include our trees, the Unity player controller, third person, and some grass. It's loading. By the way, this is being recorded. MB. Unity's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying my time with it. In fact, this tutorial has no coding in it. You can first 10 hours of learning Unity, you don't have to worry about coding. And when you load in, it'll make a basic scene for us with nothing in it except for our main camera and some light. And over here you can see the hierarchy where all the objects are listed. Over here is our scene, obviously, and our game, which shows the real-time image of the main camera. Over here is our inspector, which shows all the properties of our object, depending on which one you choose. And down here is our project files, where all our packages and assets will be stored. Unity comes with a series of built-in packages which are very useful, such as Text Mesh Pro for UI and Visual Studio Code Editor to make code working in our Unity. And right off the bat, we're gonna just bring in our packages. We go to Windows, Package Manager, My Assets, and this is where all the assets from the Unity Asset Store will show up. So if we go here, you can see when you open in Unity, it'll have an add to Unity, and you'll have to log in to add it to your assets. If you open in Unity, it'll just open our Package Manager. And since you've all downloaded it, I assume you have it. So we're just going to start with importing our third-person character controller, which will take a while to load because it's a bit old. They've been using it for a while, since 2019. So it's been through 2 versions already, and you'll need to do a little restart in order to get it working. It'll probably take a while to load. So in the while that loads, I'm going to show you how in Blender you can export your project, your scene. Over here you got your object, and over here you got your textures and the UV map textures. And we're just going to take it as 2 objects. If we go to File, Export, OBJ, we can save it and export it like so. And it'll only load the object, so it won't actually load all the paint on it. In order to do that, you need to take out the texture. Over here in our UV light, in your UV tab, you go to Image, Save As, and we just go to Texture, PNG. It'll save as a PNG. It is taking its time. And it'll ask us to restart. We want to enable the backend, so we will press yes. and it'll close out and reopen in just a second. We'll save since we technically changed the scene a little. And before we get into our adding our assets, we're just gonna import the other two packages, which will take much less time than this. Back to the package manager. We're downloading low poly tree pack. And after that, grass and flowers pack. We're just clicking on import all since we want all of it. You can also select which one, pick and choose which one you want in that import tab. And once we get back here, you can see down in our assets folder, you got all the packages, including the starter assets, grass and flowers, and broken vector. And this is our low poly trees. And so in the starter assets, and in their third person controller, and in their scenes, they all have provided us with a sample scene prefab. So if we just click and drag it into our hierarchy, it'll load in Unity's pre-rendered scene, complete with a character controller and an environment. We don't need the sample scene anymore, so we'll just unload the scene. And we're just going to click over in the game tab, and you can get right into playing and messing around with Unity like so. It comes with its player controller and such. And I don't really like the fog, so before we do anything else, we're just going to go into Windows, Rendering, Lighting, and this lighting tab handles all the lighting in Unity default, so we're just going to drag it in right next to our inspector. And in Environment, we're just going to turn fog off, or you can also just dial it down even further. And in our scene, it'll look a little better. Lets us look around in our scene. So we're going to mess around with the ground. We can double click on the scene, or we can go into environments, gray box, primitives, and ground. And we're just going to delete that from the prefab. So we can't restructure it in the hierarchy, we just need to open the prefab and delete it there. And if we go back into our game, we should fall through the ground because there is no ground. Bang. What we're going to replace the ground with is Unity's built-in terrain editor. We can go right here in our hierarchy. We just need to go down to 3D objects, and we're going to go down to terrain. And in our scene, you can see that it added our good old plane of existence over here, which is our terrain tile. We can go in Inspector, click on the terrain, and over here under our terrain, we can do create neighbor terrains, and just click wherever terrain tiles you want more terrain in. And if we load back into the scene, we now have a lovely ground to stand on and mess around with. And our scene, our terrain's looking really default. So we're just going to go over here under terrain, under paint terrain, and this is where you edit all your terrain base. So we're going to go down to paint texture, and we're going to bring in our own texture to make, when we create a layer, we're going to make our own texture. I don't like any of these, so with our square green PNG that is provided in our GitHub repository, you just drag it from your file and just place it in the assets. And from here you just say edit terrain, create layer, and it's called green. So we say green 2, and it'll just place it down. And with our brush, we select it, and we can just click on all the tiles that we have it on, that we want it on. And now we've got a nice green world, luscious green world to mess around with. So I think I'm going to paint some mountains. Under paint texture, we go to raise or lower terrain, and we can, with this tool, we can make hills, or if we want, even bigger. All we have to do is increase the brush size, and with it we can make mountains. It's looking pretty mighty well, and in our game you can see it loads in. If you press the play button, you can run around, and it's really far away. You got a lot of space to work with, and this terrain comes with its own physics, so you don't have to worry about coding any sort of hitbox into it. With this, we can, and it's looking pretty good. But I think we should like some trees. So before we mess around in the terrain trees, we're gonna go down to our low poly trees, and they've provided us with prefabs of the tree. And if we were to, we can just drag and drop it into the scene. Let's just place a few that I'll be using. You can turn around, take a look at them, and there are your trees. They're nice and loaded in. But they don't have any hitbox. They don't really exist as an object. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to our tree. It'll be selecting, let's say, the one nearest to us, that one. And if we were to add a component, Unity comes in with a lot of components that are already built in. As you can play around with them, and the one we're going to use is we're going to use Capsule Collider. Bada bing, bada boom. And this adds a hitbox to our lovely tree, which we can interact with right off the bat. It's looking a bit big and not letting me through, so I think I'm gonna decrease the radius of it a wee bit, like so it only encompasses the trunk, and we can adjust the height and even direction. X-axis, Z-axis. We're going to stick with Y-axis because that's the direction it's in. And if we load back in, that tree is looking a lot better now. We can walk through it a little, but it won't let us all the way through. Tremendous. I don't like turning around, so in our player camera, we can just turn the dude around. There we go. And make it face our trees. Now we just need to, this has been an edited tree type, so we just need to drag it back into our prefab folder. And we'll make a prefab variant. And this prefab is different than this one because it has our Capsule Collider property. Now if we go into terrain and we go into paint trees, we can add it by clicking edit tree, add tree, and dragging it right there. Add. And now when I place down our tree, it spawns a couple dozen nice little trees. It's clipping out a little, so under details we can go to billboard start and increase it so you can see all of them. Unity does this in order to save GPU, save resources. But my computer is pretty strong, so we can load all of them in. And I'm going to do the same, just I'm going to add some more small trees, make the density a little less. You can press Control Z to undo it. And we don't want just one tree, so I'm just, without adding the capsule collider, since we just want to see it, I'll add the other trees. You might notice that it's not showing up. I just placed them down here. That's because for each terrain is an individual object and you need to increase the billboard start on all of them. I'll just do that real quick. You are literally just painting on tree. You're happy little Bob Ross. Paint in mountains, paint in trees. You don't have to learn anything at all. You just edit tree, add tree. You can use this for rocks. You can use this for branches, logs, whatever object you have, and it just adds a tree like so. Any prefab you have, it'll add it. Looking nice and green over here. And as you can see, if we walk into our scene, all the small trees that we made the capsule collider with, they all have the properties of the tree. You can also mess around with the tree height, but unfortunately Unity does not like these assets because they have multiple meshes. So if you want to mess around with tree height, you gotta make in this case, you'd have to make an individual prefab and change the height of it in the mesh in Blender. I think we're good on the trees here, so I think we'll move on to the grass. We could use some of that. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do edit details, add grass texture, and it'll pop up right here. And in our assets here, we're going to go to our grass and flowers. And under grass, we're going to choose this one. This is just a PNG. You can use any sort of image in this case, and we're just going to drag it here. And what it's going to do, it's going to make the triangular grass object 1 PNG, 1 PNG, 1 PNG, and that's how grass is made in most games, right? And you don't have to worry about animation. Unity already makes the wind animation with it. So if I place it down right here, you can see our grass spawning in. And if I go to our game and press play, you can see our lovely grass. It sways with the wind. If you want the wind to blow a little faster, you just go into terrain settings, and under wind, you can just speed it up or slow it down, make it go, push it a little further, and whatnot. It's sort of stopping over there, so we're going to dial the detail distance a little further, and that'll increase the details of the grass. I'll add a little bit more grass. Paint it around our scene. Place it down nice and easy. Don't even have to think about it. Let's add some flowers there too, for the heck of it. Our flowers pack comes with a few lovely flowers. I think these ones look nice. And And I don't want them as frequent as the grass, so I'm just going to increase the brush size and decrease the target strength. And hopefully this will, yeah, look at that. Infrequently placed flowers. It's looking pretty good, and I think what we're going to do is our sky's looking a bit plain, so we're going to replace the skybox with our custom PNG image. The way we're going to do that is we're going to go to our scene, our assets, and in the folder that we provided you, we've got a skybox. This is just a regular panoramic PNG image. And we can't really use it right now. What we need to do, we gotta create a material to put it on. So if we right click on our assets, we go to create material, and let's just call it skybox. We just need to change the shader to panoramic to accept our skybox image. And right here under spherical, we're going to drag our skybox, and this is how it's gonna, if you look at the bottom right corner here, this is how it's going to look once we apply it. If you go to lighting is where you change the skybox, and we just drag, you can see here it's using a default skybox. So we're just going to drag our material and replace it right there. And in our game, what do you have it? There is our lovely clouds, our custom skybox right there. That's about it for our world creation. Just to quick note, we're going to talk about the camera real quick. Over here is our main camera. It's running Cinemachine for the third person camera, which is using the player follow camera, which is a Cinemachine virtual camera property attached to it. And it's connected to this player cam object in our player root. And there's one last thing missing here. We're missing our theme of the game jam, lovely chip. So as you might have noticed, we've got a chip obj file, and if we drag it right here, you can see our chip cube can be just dragged and dropped into the scene right there. I want to rotate it a little, so I'll just change the Y value. And you know what? I've put it a little bit in the sky because we want to add a little bit of physics to our lovely cube. If you see here, it does not have any gravity. It is simply an object, and you can jump right through it. So in order to fix that, we just go to our chip cube, and we want to add a component, rigid body, which will give it our physics engine and gravity. And in order to interact with it, we need a box collider. And if you see over here, there's your box collider, the green outline. The box collider did not like it being in the air. And if we press play now, our chip cube will fall, and we can run into it, and it'll stop us. And our chip cube is missing its paint, so over here we got our texture PNG. Just drag and drop it into our assets, and we can just go to our scene, and we can just add it right there. Now you gotta drag it to your chip cube over here. And that's how you would import your OBJ file, your Blender object into the game. And I reckon that's about it. Any questions? Mm-hmm. Uh, First step? Okay. So in your assets, you can go to starter assets under third person folder. You go to scenes and you go to playground and you just drag it right into the hierarchy here. You can also search this and our playground prefab and you can reach it there. With the other scene, you can leave it like that, or you can, when we have it loaded, so what you want to do is you want to unload it, or you want to remove it from the scene, remove scene altogether, so that only one scene has directional lighting and there's only one main camera. I think I'll stop recording now, and we can answer the questions off the stream.